there, Make It Monday fans. This is Betsy Veldman for Paper Tray Ink, and it is time again for another video challenge and technique. This week we're going to focus on the Paper Tray Ink dies, and I'm going to show you a method for getting partial cuts from your dies. You can see from my card here that I'm working with the Simply Jane frame die and coordinating stamp, and you can see where I've gotten a partial cut here. So that's what this video is all about, and I'm going to show you how to do that for yourself. So let's get started. Alright, I'm going to start off with a 3.5 by 4 3/4 inch panel of rustic cream cardstock. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a guideline. I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to draw a line about 1.5 inches from the bottom edge of my cardstock. And this is going to be the line that's going to help me line up my die when I'm doing my die cutting. Anything that falls above the line is not going to be cut with the die, and anything that falls below the line is going to be cut with the die. That'll give me that decorative edge. This line is just a guide, and you'll see later how we're going to trim along this line. Now I'm going to take my Simply Jane frame die, and I already die cut a couple pieces using this frame, one from craft foam and one from chipboard. The chipboard is a fairly lightweight chipboard, a little heavier than cereal weight, and this is just a craft foam. You can get this anywhere craft supplies are sold. Now these pieces are going to act as a shim inside of our die. I'm going to start with the chipboard, and I'm going to pop out the oval piece. I'm going to put a little removable adhesive on it, and I'm going to put it right back inside the die. And again, that's going to act as a shim so that it doesn't cut away that oval piece. You can see from my card where I did not cut the oval away. So that's why I'm putting that cardstock, or that, chipboard shim in there. Now, to get the partial cut on the outside edge of the frame, I'm going to trim away part of that frame. The piece that I'm trimming away is the piece that will actually cut when we run it through our die cut machine. And again, I'm going to put a little removable adhesive on there. I'm going to place that right back inside my die. And then I'm going to take my layer of craft foam. When I was experimenting with different sandwiches, I discovered that 2 layers of chipboard was too thick to run through my machine, and only 1 layer was still too thin, and it was still cutting through the entire die. But I discovered that the foam worked very well because it is kind of compressible when you run it through your machine. It has a little give in it, and that's why I think it worked really well. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with that. I'm going to put a little removable adhesive on it and just place it right back inside my die. Now I'm going to run it through my die cutting machine. I'm using the same sandwich I would use for regular die cutting, and I'm going to run it through without any cardstock underneath. This is just a step to kind of compress that sandwich. That foam is a little bit thick to start off with. So I'm going to just run it through on its own without die cutting anything, to get that sandwich good and ready for die cutting my cardstock panel. Alright, so there I ran it through my Vagabond, and now I'm going to die cut my cardstock panel. You can see here I'm going to take the piece of the frame that has the chipboard on it is going to go below that line. You remember where I trimmed that, right along those 2 points on the side there. I'm going to align that with that guideline that I drew. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run it through my die cutting machine. And like I said, I'm using my Vagabond, and again, just the typical sandwich that you would use for normal die cutting. And I realize everybody's machines can vary a little bit, so if this is feeling too thick for your machine, don't force it. I don't want anybody breaking their die cutting machines. So if it's feeling too thick and like it's not fitting through your machine, you're going to want to back off and adjust your sandwich a little bit. Alright, so there I ran it through my machine, and let's pull this away and let's see what happened here. You can see everything below that line that was not, where that chipboard shim was not in our frame, did cut, and the other piece did not. So now I'm going to take a scissors and I'm going to trim along that guideline. I have to do a little bit of snip there where it wasn't quite exactly aligned, and I'm going to trim away on the other side as well. Give a little snip there too, and there you can see now we have that decorative edge. And then I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take an eraser and I'm going to erase my guidelines, and we will be ready to do the stamping here shortly. There is going to be a little bit of a kind of a score line or an impression where the edge of that chipboard was. It's not very noticeable, and it's even less noticeable once you get your stamping done. I do think that using the foam layer does also help reduce that line a little bit as well. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take this coordinating stamp. It's the frame from Simply Jane. Coordinates with the die that we just used. Alright, so I'm going to pull out my really grungy looking stamp mat here. This is just a piece of thick foam that I use as a stamping mat. I really like the contrast that it gives against my cardstock. It really helps me line up my stamps with my die cut edge. And it also gives a little bit of cushion too. So I'm just going to go ahead and stamp that frame with dark chocolate ink. And there you go. Isn't that pretty? I just love that, the way it looks, that decorative edge by doing the partial die cutting. So now I'm going to take the silhouette image from also from Simply Jane, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp with Spring Rain ink. I love the new Spring Rain ink. Such a pretty color. I'm going to go ahead and stamp that right inside that frame. And then I'm going to embellish her a little bit. I'm going to take the small single rose, also from Simply Jane, with some dark chocolate ink and stamp that in her hair. And then let's give her a little pearl necklace. I'm going to stamp that with dark chocolate ink as well. And then we need a little sentiment along the bottom. Also, again, from the Simply Jane set, and I have it all laid out here on my grid block. I always use my big grid block when I'm stamping sentiments. It's so easy to line it up with the grid. And again, just with some dark chocolate ink. And then I'm going to take my tea dye pad and I'm just going to ink around the edges. I think I'm using my chai pad here. Just give a little color around those edges. Okay, so our stamped front panel is finished. We're going to take a strip of Spring Rain cardstock. This is a 3.5 by 5.5 inch strip. And I'm going to take again the small single rosebud from the Simply Jane set. And again using Spring Rain ink, and I'm just going to stamp some of those roses in the background. Just try to get them evenly spaced and alter the direction a little bit so it looks even. Stamp along the bottom edge here. We can leave the center unstamped since that is going to be covered by our front panel. Alright, I think that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to adhere my front panel to that stamped strip. I'm going to actually use a little bit of foam adhesive to adhere that, just to give it a little bit of dimension, and I like the way that decorative edge then really pops against the background when I adhere it with the foam. I'm just going to go ahead and peel off the backing and it'll be ready to adhere to our Spring Rain panel. There we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and adhere that to a cardstock card base. This is a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch standard A2 card base, or made from craft cardstock. Just go ahead and adhere that right down the center. Leave a little bit of the border on the edges, and that is all there is to our card. Alright, I hope you enjoyed today's technique and a little bit of a different take on using your dies. I'm really looking forward to playing around with this technique a little more. I have a few more samples laying on my desk right now that I just need to finish up. Lots of possibilities with this. So thanks for joining me. I can't wait to see what you all do with this technique. Have a great week. This has been Betsy Veldman for Paper Tray Ink.